So when you go to sleep, your eyes close, your eyelids over your eyes, your mouth generally closes, and the only connection between the inside of your body and outside of your body are a few small orifices, maybe in your nose and possibly your ears. So what is separating then everything that's going on internally, all the regulation there, and all the external stimulation that can possibly harm, but mostly is needed for you to continue to live? Well, that's your integumentary system, which is mostly your skin, but is also some other things like your hair and your fingernails, and acts as really that interface between all the information that's coming at you externally and the internal regulation which is going on inside of you. So the integumentary system, the largest part is the cutaneous membrane, which is your skin, which is the largest organ of the body. It is 70% of your body weight. And its functions are many. So first of all, it acts as a general protection. It is flexible and allows for, when you get hit or fall, your skin will move a little bit, can absorb some of the impact of that hit or fall. It has millions of sensory receptors for feeling heat, touch, cold, pain, injury, all of that, pain, all of that is embedded right there, very close to the outer layer of your body. It is important for thermal regulation, so you can cool off or increase your body heat. And a very essential vitamin D, is synthesized within the skin as well. There are three main regions of the skin and integumentary system. The epidermis is the outer layer, composed of stratified squamous cells. The dermis is inside that, and the hypodermis is the underlying layer of fat, which actually isn't really part of the system, but we often group it in with them because it's always there. So going on what we've talked about with tissues, using our anatomical terms, the epidermis is the most superficial, and then dermis next, adipose tissue or hypodermis there. The dense connective tissue is under there. Then you have muscle and bone. So that's going all the way from superficial to the deepest part of your body. And of course this varies depending on, you may have organs or other things besides bone underneath. So we're going to start then with the outermost layer, the epidermis, which is actually dead. Right? So there are a bunch of different cells carrying out different functions within there. So we'll go over these. The first are melanocytes, and you can't see this in the figure. It's actually this one here. Well, you can see it, but it's not labeled. This is a melanocyte, which produces the pigmented part, melanin. There are also other pigments which are made as well. And that's found in the stratum basale. We'll go over these as well. They inject melanin into keratinocytes, which then gives them their color. And the darker the color, the more shield you have or protection against ultraviolet rays. But sun is needed. Those ultraviolet rays will also help synthesize vitamin D, which then goes into your bloodstream. The darkness of your skin is determined by how much melanin is produced by these melanocytes It's not the number of melanocytes, that's generally the same for all people, but if you have a darker skin color, that means you're producing more melanin in those melanocytes. This can also be induced through UV exposure, so you go out in the sun and you will get tan or darker based on that exposure. You also have dendritic cells, also called Langerhans cells. Those are also not in this figure. And those are for immune function, so they just hang out there. If you get some sort of bacteria or something inside the cell, it will be there to defend against that. Keratinocytes produce keratin. Pretty much most all of the cells are keratinocytes here, and they even have different shapes as they mature. And we have a Merkel cell here, which is a tactile cell. These are very abundant in this bottom layer, which is important for your sense of touch. Okay. All right, so then the different layers of the epidermis. There are 5 different layers. Most places in your body, however, only have 4 layers. So we'll talk about this 5th layer and where it is approximate to the other ones, but most of them only have 4. The bottom layer is the stratum basale, so just think basal, okay, the base, and it's a single row of stem cells. All right, so you need to have stem cells there at the bottom to replace the outer cells, which are going to slough off later. The stratum spinosum then is the next layer up from there, and that has mostly keratinocytes attached by one of our intercellular connections, the desmosomes, and they have the melanin granules and dendritic cells within there as well. The next layer after that, so again, this is deep stratum basale here, superficial there. Stratum spinosum then is where these dividing stem cells are going to put the new daughter cell. That's where the new daughter cell is going to be. And it's going to continue to do that as the outer layers slough off. Okay. So our third layer then is stratum granulosum, which has 4 to 6 layers, and it's called granulosum because these keratinocytes have matured and now are filled with these granules, which release a lipid, a glycolipid, that then allows the skin to repel water and become waterproof. The 4th layer, I'm putting an asterisk on this one because this is the one that isn't always there. It's mostly not there. Just in the palms and soles of your feet, palms of your hands, soles of your feet are where you will find it. And it gives it a more rough texture, a callousy appearance, and allows for more use, right? So your hands and your feet are constantly touching and grabbing and in contact with things, and so they have that extra layer for protection. The 5th layer is the stratum corneum, and this is where you have very thin and flattened cells, and the outer layer is going to fall off. Okay, and this is a defense mechanism. You can have cells here, anything essentially attaching there, and it will just get replaced as it falls off. So what happens if you don't get enough sun, if there's not enough vitamin D, either in your diet or being produced by your skin? You can have a condition called rickets, and this usually happens in developing children. They need a lot of calcium, which is what vitamin D helps regulate, as well as phosphorus, which are important for your bones. If you don't get enough sun or you don't have enough vitamin D in your diet, it causes these bones to become more brittle, more flexible, and then they start to curve at the points where they're receiving the most stress. So this is not supposed to have this giant curve here and here. Leads to these bowed legs. So it's important to get sunlight and have enough vitamin D in your diet. All right, there are a number of epidermal derivatives. We're going to start by talking about hair, which is made of the same sort of cells, just in a different arrangement and slightly, different things being emphasized. The cuticle is the hardest keratinized portion of the hair, and it's on the outermost layer. The cortex is hard keratin injected with melanin, so this is what gives the color to the hair, and that's that's going in from the cuticle, so deep to the cuticle. The medulla is the largest, has the largest cells and is in the middle. And then you also have some structures attached to the hair at the root, including the erector pili muscle. This attaches to every hair, and when it contracts, it causes the goosebumps to appear and the hair to stand on end. And the reason that is because it allows for actually a little more insulation and maybe a fight or flight response. Then another part is the papilla, which is actually part of the dermis. This is where the myogenic part is, where the hair can grow and new parts of the hair can be seen. All right, so this is the outer layer. You can see it's overlapping kind of like shingles. This is the cuticle. Here's the cortex, medulla. At the base, you have the erector pili and the root here, and the dermal papilla is where you have your blood supply, and this is where the mitosis is occurring for the hair to grow. There are conditions where hair doesn't grow where it used to grow. This is called alopecia. This can be caused just by a genetic condition, or it can be caused by some sort of therapies which kills the cells. Sometimes it can be temporary, sometimes it can be permanent, and there are some medications that will cause all your hair to fall out as well. Within the skin, there are also many things which can occur as an imbalance that may cause an infection or some sort of scar or other things, and we call these lesions. There are many different technical terms for these. We've got a macule, a wheal. Some of these you may have heard of as zits or pimples or blackheads, but these are the more technical terms. Okay, a papule would be then your pimple. A larger papule is called a nodule, so maybe filled with more pus. A vesicle would be something that occurs as like a blister from chickenpox or measles or something of that nature. There are other conditions such as psoriasis, which can cause scales, or crusts, which are caused by eczema. A macule is simply a freckle, so on and so forth. There are some that aren't. There's one that's not represented here, which can be caused by an external inhabitant or an insect of some sort, and that can be called that would be called a burrow. This here is a botfly. Flies can leave eggs under the skin, which then mature into larvae, which then would mature into a fly. And you may have found these on your dog or cat, but they aren't very as popular up here in the southern United States, although there are some. But they're more common in tropical locations. But other things can cause burrows, lice, scabies, ticks, mites, fleas, chiggers, all those things. All right, another epidermal derivative are our fingernails or toenails, and this is a specialized epithelial cell that has a germinal root or germinal matrix, which is where the mitotic divisions are taking place, and the blood supply is supplying nutrients for that mitosis. As they grow out, as that mitosis occurs, it becomes very keratinized and hardened, and that's what forms then your nail. The epinicium, or the cuticle, is the layer of tissue that covers the nail root right here at the bottom. The visible portion is called the nail body. The sterile nail root is a proximal layer of cells that grows where the growth occurs, so under here. And then the lanula is called a little moon, or it means little moon, is the white part here. It's a little bit thicker, which is why it's a different color at the base. And those are the parts of the nail. All right, there are a number of glands embedded within your skin, within the integumentary system. Some of them secrete oil, such as the sebaceous glands. These are holocrine alveolar glands found everywhere except for the soles of your feet and the palms of your hand. We have a couple different types of sweat glands, or sudoriferous glands. They are merocrine and tubular. Eccrine sweat glands are not associated with hair, can be found all over different parts of the skin and are for cooling, whereas apocrine sweat glands are usually associated with hair and are for making you smell differently. And the pheromones, we wash our bodies so much that we don't really have this smell, but if you don't shower, you can accumulate these smells. We have ceremunious or earwax glands, or holocrine and alveolar. Those are found in your ears. And mammary glands, which these are modified sweat glands which produce milk, and they are apocrine and alveolar. There are two in primates, in humans and other ape-like monkey creatures, but in most other mammals they have 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. All right, under the epidermis then we have the dermal layer, which has a papillary region. This is the vascularized area where all the blood supply is going to supply all the nutrients for these mitotic areas where the epidermis is occurring. So the stratum basale is right there on top of the papillary layer. Also has all these nerves really close to the skin, so this is where you're going to have your concentration of heat receptors, pain receptors, cold receptors, touch receptors, pressure receptors. Below the papillary region then is the reticular region, and this has dense, irregular connective tissue. And if you remember, the purpose of that is to allow for forces at any direction to be buffered against. So you have reticular, which is arranged in all sorts of different, the dense, irregular connective tissue arranged in all different directions to allow for that to occur. And then below that you have the hypodermis, which is really just adipose and connective tissue. It's not part of the skin, and it attaches to the underlying tissue below that. It allows for some compression, a little bit of flexibility, and protects the underlying tissue as well. All right, that's it for the integumentary system.